So, Roger, let me take you back to 2012 when a group of film production companies got together and promised us the most chilling ghost story of our time. I'm talking, and you and I are going to review and talk about The Woman in Black.
Yeah, the most chilling ghost story of our time. Maybe of our time, probably not of all time. I think we've reviewed a few ghost stories here on Two Geeks which might claim that accolade. But it's a while since I watched this film, Pascal, so I specifically watched it last night in preparation for this episode, and I think it is pretty damn chilling. It is definitely atmospheric. It has definitely got a couple of mega jump scares in it. Both me and my wife, even, it's probably the third time we've watched it, jumped out of our seats again, at least twice, maybe three times, whilst rewatching it last night. And it does one of those things that I just absolutely love in these sort of ghost period pieces, in that you sometimes have to take your eye off the actor and the character and watch what's happening in the background of the scene, to see doors opening, or to see shadows flitting across mirrors, or to see dolls turning their heads. And if you go into it with that sort of mindset, you know, these films do bear multiple watches, because you can genuinely see all these things going on. So yeah, I watched it again last night, and we deliberately waited until it got a bit darker, because the clocks changed on Sunday, so it was a bit of a lighter evening. And as it got dark, I actually sat there thinking, you know, this is actually pretty good. I think that it probably is one of the most chilling ghost stories of our time.
I would agree. I've seen this movie several times now. I mean, as soon as the DVD Blu-ray was out, I bought it. So we went to watch it at the cinema with Denise, and I jumped and was essentially tense all the way through, because it was so superbly crafted. And also, what was interesting for me, and I wanted to spend a moment to say, I was a bit nervous about Daniel Radcliffe. I was nervous about whether me, as a film goer and watcher, could get past the Harry Potter thing. But of course, within moments, I forgot all about Harry Potter, because frankly, Daniel Radcliffe is an accomplished actor, and as we've seen since then, he's done other movies. But for me, the reason I went to see it is, of course, because I was excited about the potential return to form of Hammer Film Productions.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just before I talk about Hammer, I'll acknowledge Daniel Radcliffe. It was a great performance. I mean, there is a scene in the middle of the film, and just to give a quick background, he plays a character called Arthur Kipps. He travels to a isolated manor house to do some paperwork for a deceased family, and it's one of those scary English remote country towns, with villagers who are all suspicious, and scary pub landlords and scary butchers and stuff like that. And there's one scene in it, Pascal, where he's exploring or trying to find his way around this manor house at night. He's on its own, and I wish I'd actually timed it, but I reckon it must have been about 25 minutes long of him searching through this house with the jump scares, with all those things going on in the background. And because it's just him, there's no dialogue. And it's genuinely scary, genuinely suspenseful. And part of that is because of all he has is his expressions. There's no dialogue at all. It's just his expressions. And that is the sign of a good actor. And yeah, this was the return of Hammer, wasn't it? The 1960s, very much revered horror series of films, which brought us Dracula, The Mummy, Frankenstein, made massive, massive stars out of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and people like that. And I think they've managed to capture some of the gothicness and the mood, the darkness of those 1960s Hammer productions, but obviously brought them up to date with modern techniques and modern filmmaking and modern effects.
And I think it was really quite clever. Now, I've not read the book, I must confess. I've seen the play, which I will share in a moment. But I thought, just this thing of happening, taking place in 1889, the traveling into, horse-drawn carriages, all the symbols of all the films I've enjoyed or certainly enjoyed or got scared by, watching the horror movies. So, of course, other companies such as Alliance, Cross Creek, and the UK Film Council got behind it. So this is a British production. It took place using natural venues in the UK, but also sets. And again, the choice of the costumes, of the set designs, the music again, and all those creating this atmosphere. And of course, for those of you who have not seen it, we're not going to tell you what happens at the end. But needless to say, the curse of the woman in black, going to a place called Ilmarsh in a house. I mean, just a name. I'm saying, it's okay. I'll take another job if I was Arthur Kipps. But what was interesting doing the research for film marketing, I did not know, but actually when the movie was submitted to the British Board of Film Council, the BBFC, and they have to be rated, they had to actually take some scenes out and reduce some of the music because it was deemed to be too scary or been given a greater rating.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So is the uncut version the version that's on the DVD and Blu-ray?
I don't think so, because
never been released?
That's still a 12 or 12A, and there is a version that would have been a 15. And people thought, no, if it's a 15, it's like with the financiers, they worry that people are not going to go and see it. So I think that there's other scenes that were deemed to be just a little too scary. And indeed, the many claims to fame of the film, not only is it one of the biggest, and highest grossing horror film for Hammer Film Production of some time, but also the most complained about films in 2012 because it was too scary. That's a good bit of PR, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We complain because the movie is too scary to the BBFC.
Yeah, no, I mean, genuinely was jump scares, and as I say, all those funny little things going on in the background, faces in windows, shadows going across mirrors. I mean, sometimes I think, wow, that was very clever how they managed to do that. I'm sure I didn't see that the first time that I watched it.
There is a scene, which hopefully I'm not revealing too much, when he's asleep at the kitchen table. Do you know that one?
Yes.
At the cinema, you could hear people just wincing and almost trying to say to, Daniel Radcliffe, that Arthur Kipps, please wake up because there's something behind you that, in a way, perhaps you don't want to see, but you can't stay asleep. And it was just so well. It was almost, playing to all our fears, going around this derelict ancient building with just a candle, which could essentially be extinguished at no time by a draft. And just to land, the marshy land, but also, of course, the curse of the locals, saying to Arthur Kipps, you're going to cause trouble here. We don't want you around. We don't want you snooping around, this house and so on.
And one of the things that really struck me when I was watching it is, and this motif appears in lots of scary movies and ghost stories in particular, and that is old-fashioned toys and dolls.
Oh yeah, what is it about those things? Honestly,
I know. I mean, you've got the old-fashioned dolls with the eyes that go up and down. There's always some sort of monkey bashing symbols together.
They need to stop that.
And you just think, I wonder whether back in the old days when those were genuinely toys for kids, whether the kids of the time were just scared crapless by these toys that they had, or whether it's the fact that we now look back on toys like that and we've made them scary. But in fact, in those days, those toys were just absolutely joyous and cute and cuddly, and the kids loved them. That's something that's always interested me.
Likewise, I always think whether, those kind of mechanical toys or automaton, I think they were called, there was something just weird for the people because they came alive for a moment in time. But 1889, the maybe the early days of electricity, the early days of, obviously, some of the, record players and so on. So maybe technology was kind of creeping into people's lives and it was just unsettling for them and deemed to be just unpleasant. But there's always, a monkey playing the symbols that in those horror movies. And it's just almost like as soon as you see one, you go, oh, here we go. It's going to start to play without, being essentially, touched by anyone. So, interestingly, there are always critics, aren't they, Roger? We mentioned this actually before sitting down to record film marketing, but people say, "Oh, well, it's by the book. It's almost like someone walked around with a clipboard and a checklist, and please do that." Because that's what ghost stories have. Well, I don't have a problem with this. If you're going to make the most chilling ghost story of all time, you've got to put everything in there to make it obviously something that not only we've talked about nearly 10 years later, but also won all the awards, and to this day is deemed to be the most successful ghost story of all times.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly approve of it.
So, sorry, Roger.
Yeah, there was a TV series recently called The Haunting of Hill House, which has quite a lot of similar tropes and motifs in there. So I'm a big fan of this genre.
Absolutely. Shall we talk about marketing?
Yeah.
So, number one, what I liked about it was, the tagline. What makes things complicated? The tagline was a question which was addressed in the audience and almost suggesting you might, after watching The Woman in Black, do you believe in ghosts? ? Was the tagline, which I think is inspired.
Yeah, I mean, you can have an entire conversation in the pub around that question, can't you? And most people would have a very animated conversation. So that's a joyous tagline because it creates interactivity, doesn't it? Straight away. Absolutely love that. And they must have had one of the first Facebook pages ever created for a film as well, I guess. Around about 2010.
You and I have always been rather critical of the lack of, social media activities, or sometimes doing just the essentials, but not actually being particularly inventive. And what I will say is that on this occasion, and you're going to help us remind ourselves of the many activities on social media, but this is a movie and a team that has gone behind social media properly. So yes, they launched the page in July 2010, which is essentially during pre-production. Mm-hmm. And releasing a few snippets as you would, and kind of letting people know about what was happening. But really it came, it started to come alive leading up to the release of the movie in the spring of 2012. And from there, I think we've got really quite a informative and inspirational teaser campaign and social media campaign, if you don't mind going through some of the items with us.
Yeah, I mean, there was the usual trailer, a cinema trailer, and teaser posters and stuff like that. But starting in February 2012, we had 3 featurettes on their. They had a YouTube channel, so they were talking to the cast and crew, retelling a classic ghost story, behind the scenes, making of the film, that sort of thing. There was a competition on Twitter. I mean, Twitter was only launched in 2006, wasn't it? So this was 6 years into Twitter, but still not that many campaigns revolved around social media at the time. But the competition was for a chance to win limited edition Hammer film posters. There was other interviews that you could interact with. James Watkins, the writer, Jane Goldman, and Daniel Radcliffe, of course. And they started building all of this stuff. Daniel Radcliffe took over Glamour magazine's Twitter feed, for example, which I thought was quite interesting. In March, there was more teasers. Did The Woman in Black make you scream? Download Hammer Film Scream app to record some more. Scream app. Give us your thoughts on Woman in Black in one sentence. See how the original strapline, Do You Believe in Ghosts, was interactive. There's a real thread running through this about how interactive it was. Before the film, they were teasing you. After the film, they were saying, did it make you scream? What were your thoughts in one sentence? In May, again, there was the ability to tweet questions to Daniel and get him to reply to you.
Wow.
And can you tell us what happened in the next scene? This went on for months. June 2012, he's running a ghost story competition on YouTube that Daniel's involved with as well. And this carried on all the way through to the end of June, when they released the DVD and the Blu-ray. So, yeah, there's been a few films recently which have been a little bit further in the past, and therefore the marketing was probably limited to traditional posters and traditional film trailers, but this one was super interactive. I love the interactiveness of this. It really did suck you in.
I think that's why I was so pleased you reminded us, because this is where film marketing as a segment of the podcast worked for me, because it's a source of inspiration, thinking, so what have I done pre-production to let the audience know that it's coming? What am I doing once it's been released, and how am I keeping the conversation going for weeks and months? Now I accept that someone writing a blog post or doing a vlog video won't have the impact and reach of the Woman in Black, but I think the principles and the idea of, once you've done your content, it's been published, that's when the marketing begins.
Yeah, and the lessons that we can all learn from this sort of thing. I mean, again, the question, do you believe in ghosts? Don't they say, you and I do presentations, we do speeches at conferences. One of the best ways to open a speech is to ask a question. Don't go on stage and say, hello, everybody, my name's Roger, and I'm going to talk to you today about marketing, and I've got 25 years of marketing. You go in and hit them with a question. Now, imagine you walk into an auditorium, stand on the stage and say, do you believe in ghosts? You would get a reaction to that, wouldn't you?
Mm.
And that is the simple genius of this marketing campaign. It leads with that interactive question, and you just can't help but get sucked into answering it.
For me, what The Woman in Black represents is of course, it's true experience to watch the film. Then if you've read the book, you're going to get something additional. Of course, if you've seen the play, as I have, you get... And it's really one of those movies where no matter your age, so long as, of course, you're within the legal age of watching the film, so over the age of 12, according to the DVD cover, you're going to enjoy this, because if you're from the generation you and I have enjoyed Hammer films, then you're thinking, brilliant, I've been waiting. Well, I think the last Hammer movie was done in the late 70s, so that's a long time waiting for a new film production, because of course, we've seen all the others. If you don't know Hammer films at all because you're very young, you'll know Harry Potter. And so on. So there's a hook for everybody, but then all together as a collective, we just essentially fear for the character of Arthur Kipps as he's discovering more and more about the curse of the Woman in Black.
And the only problem I have with this movie, Pascal, is the ending.
Which we can't obviously reveal.
Can't obviously reveal. So all I can say is, and this is not, in no way would I discourage people from seeing it, but I don't disagree with the ending of the movie because it wasn't dramatic or it wasn't shocking. It is both those things. But I genuinely have a problem with the end of the movie, which we'll maybe discuss in a separate podcast at a later date. But genuinely, it is a shocking ending to a very scary film, and that's in keeping with the way the film was put together, so that's fine. It's just that for me, I had a few issues with the ending.
No, well, for viewers and listeners, leave your comments in the usual places in terms of, do you agree with Roger by the ending? I think I am in agreement with you on that one, certainly. But because the rest of the movie, pretty much 99% of it is so spot on, it's I forgive the ending. Although there's many websites writing very lengthy articles about the ending, as we well know. Talking of ending, I think sadly we need to bring episode 35 to a close. Can I thank you for being such a brilliant co-host as always, and can I thank you, viewers and listeners, for your support once again. Please leave your messages, comments and suggestions in the usual places. Until the next one, go out there and make sure your marketing is done right. I was Pascal Fintoni and he was Roger Edwards. Bye for now.